practitioners. Mirza Saab Beg, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I will very quickly begin by just explaining what the law is, since I've been asked to talk about the domicile law and the changes that are going to take place in Kashmir because of this. We are quite concerned as Kashmiris because this change is going to be irreversible once it is effected. So I'll very quickly explain what the law is, what the effect of that law is, and then finally I can take questions towards the end. So first of all, the Indian government has announced rules for domiciles in Kashmir. What this means is that they have created 3 different categories for people who are not Kashmiris, people who are Indians, who will now qualify for certain privileges in Kashmir. Until now, Indians did not have these rights, but now through the domicile law, they will get them. The first category is of those non-Kashmiris who have lived in Kashmir for 15 years. They will become domiciles. The second is those who have studied in Kashmir for 7 years, which is probably going to be children of ex-army officers or present army officers, children of bureaucrats, Indian bureaucrats who are serving in Kashmir. And the third category is that of people who have served in Kashmir for 10 years under an undertaking of the Indian government. So if you have 10 years service in Kashmir, you are eligible. Now, what is interesting is that the time limit for grant of domicile certificate has been kept only 15 days. So once you make an application, within 15 days, a non-Kashmiri can get the domicile certificate. A fine of 50,000 rupees will be charged from the salary of any Kashmiri officer who does not give these certificates on time. So normally in government service, things usually get delayed, but in this, there's a sense of urgency from the government of India, which is underscored in this law. Now, this is a major departure from the existing procedure. Under the existing law, Indians do not have a right to buy land in Kashmir. And under this law, they will get a right of employment in Kashmir, which also they do not have till now. And it is now mandatory for educational institutions. If you want to get admission in an educational institution, you need to have a domicile certificate. What this means is that if Kashmiris do not have domicile certificates, their children will not be able to study in educational institutions in Kashmir, and they will not be eligible for government jobs in Kashmir. The reason this is very important is because government service is the largest employer in the state right now. Because the Indian state, through successive lockdowns, through internet blockades, through other measures, they have completely crippled the private economy. There is hardly any private economy in Kashmir. So for survival, people need to depend on state employment. And if all state employment is now in control of the central government, and even non-Kashmiris start competing against Kashmiris, there will be more unemployment in Kashmir. Already right now, 25% of Kashmir's youth is unemployed. 25% is a massive number. And these are children, these are people who live in a conflict zone. There is internet shutdown, there is communication blockade. So we don't have regular education in Kashmir. To expect these people to compete against Indians who have no restriction in their education, they're not placed at an equal footing. Now, to specifically point out how this is going to change, we don't even need to wait. The demographic change is not going to take place. What has to be understood is that the demographic change has already taken place. It is taking place as we speak right now. In the first week of this law being made, this law being promulgated, 33,000 non-Kashmiris were given domicile certificates. And if you look at the census data, according to the census data of 2011, there are nearly 1.5 million non-Kashmiris who qualify under the 15-year category. I'm not even talking about the 10-year category or the 7-year category. Under the 15-year category alone, 1.5 million non-Kashmiris will qualify. 1.5 million non-Kashmiris is nearly 15% of Kashmir's population, because the population is around 12 million people over there. So 15% will qualify if this is effected. That in itself is a tremendous demographic change. Now, the reason this is very concerning is because these people will now get voting rights in Kashmir. They will participate in the electoral process in Kashmir. They will legitimize things which are not accepted by the Kashmiri population. And this is very concerning for us. Further, you also have to imagine 10 years, 15 years down the line, these people, their children will become a part of the economy and the social structure in Kashmir. If there is a resolution on Kashmir tomorrow, it is very difficult to get these people out of there. And we then enter into other issues of international law as to the rights of those domiciles. Say 30 years down the line, 40 years down the line, the non-Kashmiri domicile who has come and settled over there, that person's child or their children, how will we get them out of there? How can we kick them out of Kashmir? Then it's a new debate altogether. Although legally speaking, we have solutions. We can work out solutions around that also for who will get to vote in a plebiscite if it ever takes place. There are ways to work around it, but this complicates the situation, and that is exactly what the government of India wants, because they don't want to have a resolution of the process. They want to complicate it so that status quo is maintained. Now, immediately, this affects Kashmiris because, as I said, that it will create tremendous unemployment over there. Because right now, there is a total of about 4.8 lakh or about 500,000 jobs available in Kashmir. And despite that, the economic survey of 2016 has said that 25% of our youth is unemployed. Now, for these 500,000 jobs, if non-Kashmiris also start competing, then Kashmiris will not have any employment. You can also see that in February this year, the Indian government opened up tenders for mining of natural resources in Kashmir. 100% of the tenders were given to non-Kashmiris. They were given to Indians. And this is because this is the first time that this tender process was done online. Normally, the tender process is a physical process, but this time it was done online. And in Kashmir, there was an internet blockade at that time. So Kashmiris could not even apply for the tenders. This is a concerted effort to deprive Kashmiris from any economic control within the state so that resistance becomes very expensive. If the state controls all means of employment, if the state controls all means of economy, then resistance becomes harder for the people. The second thing that has to be understood is that only 30% of our land is fit for habitation and cultivation. If non-Kashmiris come in, if this unplanned influx of Indians takes place, where will they go? So what the Indian government is doing is they are engaging in deforestation of our land now, and nearly already 50,000 acres of our land is under illegal occupation of the Indian army. The term illegal occupation has been used by the state government, the pro-India state government itself, because they have not even taken permission from that state government, which is already pro-India. So 50,000 acres of our land is under control of the Indian army. There is hardly any habitable land to go around except for state-owned land, which will be used for business activity, for setting up factories, and they will engage in deforestation. This deforestation is going to cause an irreversible impact on the ecology of Kashmir. We have living glaciers in Kashmir, which will be affected by this. We have already seen a flood in 2014. So if the ecology is affected in Kashmir, it will have devastating consequences for us. Also, I will very quickly touch upon how this new law is a parallel with Israel's policies in Palestine, because over there also, since 1995, Israel has escalated the use of residency revocation as a punitive measure against Palestinians who don't comply. There are three principles which they use over there. The first is if a Palestinian has been living abroad for an extended period of time, then they lose their residency rights. The second is if they fail to prove that their center of life is in Jerusalem. So you have to establish that you are connected over there, otherwise you lose your right of residency. And the third one, which is the most concerning for us, is that if they breach minimum loyalty, this is the term used by the court in 2006, that if Palestinians breach minimum loyalty to Israel, they'll lose residency rights. What this means is if the same is applied in Kashmir, if Kashmiris breach minimum loyalty to India, they will lose their residency rights in Kashmir, and they will be forced to move to places in India for employment and education. And in India, Kashmiris are quite unsafe. We are frequently attacked. We are discriminated on the basis of our appearance, on the color of our skin, the color of our cheeks, and we are frequently attacked across India. India is not a safe place for a Kashmiri to be in, but people have to go there for education, for employment, because there is no other means of survival otherwise. So assessing these developments that are taking place, it is quite likely that the Kashmiri landscape is going to be seeded with predatory militarized settlements in a hegemonic fashion, which is blatantly similar to Palestine. The implications of this can only be calamitous. The threat of demographic change, the loss of livelihood, and the increased competition for meager, scarce natural resources is bound to electrify an already incensed population. And Indians must realize that they have pushed Kashmiris so far that there is nothing left to lose for Kashmiris. Until now, there was a modicum, there was at least on paper, there was some level of autonomy. But now even that has been stripped. We have been divided into two union territories today, separated into Ladakh, separated into Jammu and Kashmir. And these policies are being acted upon and being enacted by the Indian government with a feverish pace. And there is no repercussion. Seemingly, it doesn't look like the Indian government has been deterred by any international criticism. They have not been deterred by the threat of war. So they are going ahead. In fact, even the COVID pandemic has not deterred them. Right now, India is facing an economic collapse. India is facing tremendous instability internally, and the migrant crisis, in which the images some of you may have seen, where you must have seen Indian migrant laborers walking hundreds of kilometers, collapsing out of exhaustion and hunger. Despite all of that the Indian state is facing right now, they feel it is more important to engage in a demographic change in Kashmir than address the problems of their own people right now. So in response, I feel that it is immediate right now that we require a call to action. We should take a decision on concrete measures that can be taken to deter this change from taking place. Because once it is concretized, it is going to be very hard to reverse this change. And then to talk of plebiscite, to talk of solutions becomes even harder. In response, we as Kashmiris realize that we cannot indulge in the luxury of despair and despondency. We need to, and we will continue to engage in the persistent labor of hope, of resistance, despite the reckless violation of our rights and democracy by the Indian state. So I think I've just completed my 10 minutes. So I will take questions. I'm happy to take any questions. I think Altaf Saab will tell me if I have to take questions right now or towards the end.
Yeah, questions will be taken towards the end. Thank
Right.
you, Mirza Saab Beg, for your